Before FESTAC 77 became one of the largest cultural gatherings in Africa history, there was an important question to ask. Why was Nigeria choosing to host it? The story begins in April 1966 when the first World Festival of Negro Arts was held in Dakar, Senegal. The event brought together artists, writers, musicians, scholars, and performers from across Africa and the Black diaspora. As the festival came to an end, attention turned to the future. The organizers wanted a second edition that would be larger and more representative of the global Black experience. At the time, Nigeria stood out as the natural choice. Not only was it the most populous Black nation in the world, but it was also emerging as one of the Africa's most influential countries. Following independence in 1960, Nigeria had become an important voice in African affairs, supporting anti-colonial struggles and advocating for Pan-African cooperation across the continent. Although plans were interrupted by the Nigerian Civil War between 1967 and 1970, but Nigeria remained committed to the vision of hosting the next festival. By the mid-1970s, Nigeria was experiencing an oil boom that transformed the country's economy. Rising petroleum revenues gave the government the financial capacity to undertake the project on a scale few African nations could match. Determined to make FESTAC 77 a landmark event, Nigeria invested an estimated $400 million in the festival and its supporting infrastructure. The funds were used to construct the National Theatre, develop FESTAC Village, improve roads and public facilities, and accommodate thousands of visitors from across Africa and the global diaspora. At the time, this represented one of the largest cultural investments ever made by an African nation. The government saw the proposed festival as more than a cultural event. It was an opportunity to celebrate African achievements, reconnect Africa with its global diaspora, and present the continent to the world through its own voice rather than foreign narratives. For millions of people across the Americas, the Caribbean, Europe, and other parts of the world whose ancestors had been taken from Africa during the transatlantic slave trade, the continent represented a historical homeland. Hosting the festival in Nigeria will help strengthen those cultural and historical connections. As preparation gained momentum, Nigeria committed enormous resources to the project. New housing estates, transportation networks, cultural facilities, and performance venues were planned to accommodate thousands of visitors from around the world. The goal was simple: to create a festival larger, more ambitious, and more influential than anything African had seen before. Nigeria accepted the responsibility of hosting the second World Black and African Festival of Art and Culture, a decision that would eventually transform part of Lagos forever. Although Nigeria had agreed to host the festival, but turning the vision into reality would take years. The original expectation after the Dakar Festival was that Nigeria would host the second edition around 1970. However, the outbreak of the Nigerian Civil War in July 1967 forced those plans to be suspended For 3 years, national survival and reconstruction took priority over international cultural celebrations. After the war ended in January 1970, attention gradually returned to the project. A major breakthrough came on 3rd October 1972 when the International Festival Committee met in Lagos for the first time. During that meeting, organizers officially scheduled the festival for November 1974. The committee also adopted a new name. What had previously been known as the World Black Festival of Arts and Culture became the Second World Black and African Festival of Art and Culture, reflecting a stronger emphasis on African unity and cooperation. To coordinate participation from around the world, the organizer divided countries and diaspora communities into 16 geographical zones, each represented within the International Festival Committee. But as preparation advanced, the scale of project grew dramatically. Nigeria was no longer planning a simple cultural gathering. The government wanted a historic event that would surpass the 1966 Dakar Festival in size, feasibility, and impact. Thousands of accommodations had to be built, major roads had to be upgraded, a world-class cultural venue had to be completed, and an entire residential community had to be created to house international participants. As a result of that, the original November 1974 date became impossible to meet. The festival was postponed to November 1975. Then, another challenge emerged on July 29, 1975. General Yakubu Gowon was removed from power in a military coup and replaced by General Murtala Mohammed. The new administration reviewed ongoing national projects, including FESTAC, leading to further adjustments in planning and implementation. Before preparation could be completed, tragedy struck again. On 13 February 1976, General Murtala Mohammed was assassinated during an attempted coup in Lagos. His deputy, Lieutenant General Olusegun Obasanjo, assumed leadership and decided that the festival would continue despite the political disruptions. By this stage, FESTAC had become a symbol of national pride and African unity. Construction continued on the National Theatre, while workers raced to complete the massive housing estate known as Vesta Village, built specifically to accommodate participants from around the world. After years of planning, postponement, and political transitions, the festival finally opened on 15 January 1977 and continued until 12 February 1977. More than 16,000 participants from 56 countries and territories arrived in Lagos to celebrate African culture, history, music, literature, art, and identity. For nearly a month, Lagos became the cultural capital of the Black world. On 15 January 1977, the opening ceremony of FESTAC 77 took place at the National Stadium in Surulere, Lagos, marking the beginning of the largest celebration of Black African culture ever organized. One of the memorable moments of the ceremony was a grand parade featuring participants from over 56 countries who marched proudly before visiting dignitaries, diplomats, and Nigeria's head of state, General Olusegun Obasanjo. The stadium came alive with color and spectacle as delegates appeared in vibrant ceremonial robes. Touring stage performers rose above the crowd on 14-foot stage, and Nigerian dancers balanced flaming horns on their hands in a breathtaking display of cultural artistry to symbolize the unity, freedom, and shared heritage of Black people across the world. Thousands of white doves were released into the Lagos sky. The ceremony reached its climax when the Shango priest lights the festival bowl, officially declaring FESTAC 77 open. The festival also featured an extraordinary lineup of performers from across Africa and the diaspora. Legendary artists such as Stevie Wonder, Miriam Makeba, Gilberto Gil, Franco Luambo, Macchiadi, and Mighty Sparrow performed before international audience, making FESTAC one of the greatest musical gatherings in African history. By the end of the festival, approximately 50 plays, 150 music and dance performances, 80 films, 40 art exhibitions, and more than 200 poetry and cultural sessions had been staged, showcasing the richness and diversity of Black and African creativity. One of the most important events of FESTAC 77 was the FESTAC Colloquium, held during the first week of the festival. More than 700 writers, scholars, artists, and intellectuals from African and the global diaspora gathered to discuss the future of African culture, identity, education, and development. The discussions explored how African voices could gain greater recognition on the global stage and how newly independent nations could preserve their cultural heritage while charting their own path forward. Among those associated with the intellectual and cultural exchanges surrounding FESTAC were renowned figures such as Chinua Achebe, Wole Soyinka, Olarotimi, and many other leading thinkers, writers, and artists of the era. For many participants, the colloquium was not simply an academic gathering, it was an opportunity to imagine Africa's future through African eyes. As Nigerians prepare to welcome the Black world to Lagos, one priceless African treasure remained thousands of miles away. The ivory pendant marks of Queen Idia, the famous queen mother of the Benin Kingdom, had been taken during the British punitive expedition of 1897 and ended up in British Museum. When Nigeria was preparing for FESTAC 77, organizers selected the Queen Idia marks as the official symbol of the festival because it represented African artistic achievement and cultural pride. In 1976, the Nigerian government formally requested that the British Museum should bring back the original marks for the duration of the festival. The request was denied. The museum publicly stated that the refusal was based primarily on conservation concerns and the safety of the artifacts during travel. However, the refusal sparked controversy. Many Nigerians and Pan-African intellectuals felt that it was unfair for Britain to deny access to an object that had been originally been taken from Benin during the 1897 military expedition. The issue became symbolic of larger debate over colonial-era looting and return of African cultural heritage. The British Museum instead offered a replica or cast of the marks, but Nigerian organizers rejected that proposal and commissioned Nigerian artists to create a new version that became the official FESTAC emblem. As FESTAC entered its final week, two of its most spectacular events took place. From 5th to 8th of February 1977, the historic Grand Durbar was held in Kaduna. Thousands of visitors traveled more than 700 kilometers from Lagos to witness a magnificent display of northern Nigeria heritage. Emirs arrived on horseback, surrounded by cavalrymen, drummers, trumpeters, camel riders, masqueraders, and traditional entertainers. The event celebrated centuries-old traditions associated with Hausas, Fulani, Kanuri, and other northern cultures, symbolizing unity within Nigerian diversity heritage. Back in Lagos, another unforgettable spectacle unfolded along the waterfront. The boat regatta, held at Queen Drive in Ikoyi, brought together participants from several Nigerian states. More than 200 decorated boats filled the waters, carrying musicians, dancers, acrobats, masquerades, and cultural performers. The event highlighted Nigeria's rich river traditions and demonstrated the diversity of cultures that existed within a single nation. Together, the Durban and Regatta showed that FESTA was not only about reconnecting Africa with its diaspora, but it's also an opportunity for Nigeria to showcase the remarkable cultural traditions that existed within its own borders. FESTAC 77 was more than a celebration of culture. It was a declaration that Africa and people of African descendants would tell their own stories, define their own identity, and reshape their own future. When the festival opened, not every African nation was fully free. Countries such as Zimbabwe, then known as Rhodesia, were still under white minority rule, while Namibia remained under South African control. Across Southern Africa, millions of Africans were still struggling against colonialism, racial segregation, and apartheid. In this context, FESTA became a symbol of hope. The festival reminded Africans that despite colonial borders, different languages, and diverse traditions, they share a common history and destiny. It provided a platform where artists, scholars, and political thinkers could celebrate African achievements while discussing the challenges still facing the continent. The spirit of FESTAC also echoed the dreams of some Africa's greatest Pan-African leaders. It reflected the vision of Marcus Garvey, who encouraged people of African descent to take pride in their heritage and reconnect with Africa. It carries the ideas of Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, who believed that Africa's progress depended on unity and cooperation among its nation. It honored the memory of Patrice Lumumba, the Congolese independence leaders whose struggles symbolize African determination to control its own resources and destiny. The festival also resonated with efforts of leaders such as Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, Ahmed Sekou Toure of Guinea, and many others who champions African self-determination and dignity on the world stage. Nearly 50 years later, the festival remains one of the strongest expressions of Pan-African unity ever organized, reminding future generations that culture can be a powerful force for identity, freedom, and solidarity. Nearly 5 decades later, the legacy of FESTAC 77 continues to inspire new generations. Its influence can still be seen in FESTAC Town today, the National Theatre, African art, and ongoing movement to reclaim and preserve African cultural heritage. As the world approaches the 50th anniversary of FESTAC 77 in 2027, discussions, cultural programs, exhibitions, and commemorative activities are already being planned by various organizations, cultural institutions, and Pan-African groups to honor the festival's enduring legacy and renew its vision for a new generations of Africans and people of African descendants around the world. FESTAC 77 was more than an event. It was a statement that African history belongs to Africans, a statement that African culture is not a relic of past, but a living force shaping the future, and a reminder that when Africans come together with a shared purpose, they can create something powerful enough to inspire the world. As we remember FESTAC 77 today, we are reminded that the responsibility of preserving and telling African stories now rests with us, because if we do not tell our story, someone else may tell it for us and they may not tell it right. My name is Akanni, and I'm inspired to tell and share African story, either past or present.